Like if this person is a sexual abuser, if this person is literally a registered sex offender, they can go into certain places, dress like a woman, and use women's spaces.
I think that you're not wrong. I think that a lot of people don't realize this is happening with their kids. This ideology is being pushed.
They don't believe it.
Yeah. In the past 7 years, it's been at least probably the most likely estimate is anywhere from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of minors who have had some form of gender affirming, either hormone therapy or top surgery, as they call it, which is a double mastectomy, in the past 7 years, something like that.
Slightly off topic, but on topic.
Yes.
You know, when a conservative goes on Joe Rogan, the media will pick out little clips and just rip them apart. And there was something that Matt Walsh claimed to be in the millions that it turns out was like in the hundreds of thousands.
And he even said, he goes, Media Matters is going to have a field day with that.
Yes. And that kills me because I'd say on things he talked about, I agreed with him, and you can Google and affirm he's right on like 99% of the stuff.
Yeah.
And the fact that he gets one thing wrong, that's what everybody's going to focus on.
Yes.
And he's gracious about it. He's like, yeah, I was wrong. No big deal.
Yeah. And he makes a joke about it later.
Yeah.
He said, well, I would say there's another thing that probably is in the millions. And he says, I would say millions, but you know, then I already did that and messed up, you know. But yes, he predicted and assumed that it was in the millions of minors who have went through some sort of gender affirming surgery, whatever, you name it, medication. The reason why this has such a small voice is because the institutions are for it. The institutions say that gender, they're starting to slip and slide and say now gender is on a spectrum and all this stuff. And kids at 5 years old can figure out what their sexual identity is.
Well,
and
I
this
think
kind of
it's
stuff.
because of, well, it starts with the education system, but obviously the medical community, especially psychologists and therapists and stuff, because that's on board with it, parents are just like, well, if that's what the psychologist thinks.
Yeah.
Like,
so the reason why they label you as a bigot if you're not on board with this, and the reason they by and large, our society will acknowledge, they'll take what the medical community says is, oh, they say gender is a spectrum and we need to affirm their gender identity and all this stuff. They don't ask what the motivational factors are. And Matt Walsh tells them the motivational factors is each one of these kids that goes through transgender, you know, hormone therapy and whatever, and surgeries represents millions of dollars for these institutions, for the medical communities and all this. There are plastic surgeons who have dropped every other bit of their clientele and specifically do phalloplasties and vaginoplasties and all this kind of stuff. They create genitals.
It's not out of their good heart and for charity. They're getting money off
They're
of this.
getting paid massive, exorbitant amounts of money.
Yep.
They're getting paid really a lot of money to perform these gender affirming things.
Because it's just like the student loan system that the government underwrote.
Yes.
Now that the government, through Medicaid and stuff, is underwriting these stuff with the medical community, they can charge what they want and get all these poor kids that come from bad homes that possibly may lead into their gender confusion.
It's literally psychological
They make
blackmail.
it binary, yeah.
Yeah, they make it blackmail. It's like, listen, your daughter's transgender, and she's going to commit suicide, probably, if you don't let her transition. Would you rather have a living son or a dead daughter?
Yeah.
It is literally emotional blackmail, and it's awful. When he was talking about the prison thing, people don't even know that's happening.
There's so many instances of people gaming the system, right? There's the prisoner who went to jail and immediately decided they were trans and impregnated 2 prisoners while they're in there.
Yeah, that's happening all over the country, by the way.
Yes.
And these women have no... You want to talk about giving a voice to the voiceless? These women have no voice. They're in prison. Who are they supposed to talk to? Now they're locked in a cage 24 hours a day with men. Many of them are sex offenders.
Like that guy stabbed his foster father to death and then said, oh, I'm trans and identify as a woman. And apparently it's a new law that they literally... And they talk about it later. It's something that Joe Rogan brings up that's super interesting. He says that... you've got these guys who could be money launderers and like they could be thieves, robbers, whatever. And then you go in and they assign them to the prison that they say they are. well, I identify as a female. And they just take their word for it. There's no facts at all. This person who's in jail, maybe for lying, embezzling, or whatever, you don't think they could lie about that? They could scam about what their gender is?
Yeah.
And obviously they do. That person impregnated, 2 people by transitioning to a female prison?
Well, I mean, liberal ideals are often like in this utopia type thing. It's not based in reality a lot of times. It's like with the whole bathroom stuff.
Yes.
Like they were like, no man is going to pretend to be a woman just to get in the girls' bathroom. And then yet we saw it happen across the country. In Texas, a woman was attacked in the bathroom. A man threw on a dress and went in the Target bathroom. Like it does happen. And it's like they don't believe that there are liars and criminals and mentally ill people who hurt people.
These were conditions that existed throughout human history, but they knew what they were. They were fetishes. You know, a man likes to dress in woman's clothes. They wouldn't say he's probably a woman, and everybody has to call him a woman, and everybody has to adhere to his fetish. They'd say he's got a fetish. You know, he's an outlier. The interesting things about their conversation about What is the Woman, the movie, is how similarly aligned they are from their backgrounds being so totally different. Because Matt Walsh is like a Catholic Christian, very conservative type background.
Which he tried very hard to not bring up any religious stuff or base any of his arguments on religious things. He only brought it up when Joe Rogan pulled it out of him.
Yeah. The thing that they both agreed on is the emotional blackmail that they tell. You have these doctors who want to make money off the kids, and they tell them, say, listen, we believe your daughter is trans, and would you rather have a living son, trans son, or a dead daughter who will kill herself later? What I love about what you said, the liberal ideology and a lot of these ideals exist in sort of the ether, and they're not grounded in reality.
Yeah.
What testifies to that is this logic train during their conversation that Matt Walsh goes down that I love.
You know, we know that trans identification has risen, in the youngest generation, has risen like 20 or 30 fold, right? And what they tell us on the left is that, well, that's not social contagion. This is just people now feel comfortable to live their truth. So there's always been this many trans people. It's just that in the past they couldn't announce that to the world because it was an unaffirming society.
Joe Rogan says all the time that the left denies that the LGBTQA2 plus whatever community and the overwhelming presence of more and more people identifying with it. He says that the left believes that they've always existed. This is not social conditioning. This is not they're not being conditioned by our social, like our culture to think it's okay. They're literally always existed as LGBTQ people.
Just hidden.
Throughout history, they've just been hidden and uncomfortable with it.
Right. So they tell you, well, if that's true, and you had like millions of trans people in the past who are living in these unaffirming societies, and we're also told that if you don't affirm trans people, it leads to suicide, then shouldn't we see, if we look back through history, just this unbroken mass epidemic across the world of people killing themselves in mass because they're not being affirmed as trans? That's not what we find.
And how come you haven't had an epidemic of child suicide throughout human history?
Yeah.
He's like, why aren't they killing themselves? Because there's never been a culture until now that is okay and affirming and celebratory, like celebrating this trans LGBTQ thing. It's always been sheltered and not accepted. Why hasn't there been for thousands of years?
Yeah.
Tons of children suicide if it was harmful for them not to affirm their gender identity.
Yeah.
And they don't think about that. If you like this clip from the Not Gospel Studios YouTube channel, don't forget to share. Click on one of the other links and videos. You can find them here and here, and subscribe. I think it's down here. Tell your friends about us. Tell them that it's healthy, that it's vegan, and all of those things. Keep being awesome, because that's how God made you.